death, so to speak. You can't have a local industry if there's no money circulating in the communities. Full stop. And that is a big, big problem. The profits are too high, the wages are too low in South Africa. It's not, and Business Day and the conservative economists are completely wrong about this. But then again, they think that the gross domestic product is the same as gross domestic profits. They don't understand, I think, basics of what consists the economy. They think that wages are a cost to the economy. Wages are not a cost to the economy. Wages are a part of the national income. It's a part of the national income.
We have time for 2 more questions.
No response to my comment.
My comment is for Dick. I found your question interesting. What does it mean to say that something is unsustainable? I think my thoughts on that, I'd just like to add another question. What is the role of saying something is unsustainable? And there are models for thinking around this in terms of how acknowledgements of unsustainability then lead to processes of creative destruction and reorganization and realignment. And it just strikes me that the system of sustainability reporting, where you almost indefinitely defer saying that something is unsustainable, or saying you're going to fix it constantly, doesn't actually allow us to get to that point. And then also, just a comment generally on the panel, what seems to me to be emerging is that wages is really the area that's going to trigger the release of the system, that's going to trigger the reconfiguration of the system rather than the environment, although that's the long-term issue.
This gentleman there, that's the last one, please.
Thank you very much. Malusa Balantula from the, shall I say, National Planning Commission. Thanks very much for very profound insights, actually, on a very important industry in our country. There must be something we're doing wrong or very right in this country in that 2 weeks or so ago, or 3 weeks, I happened to attend 1 or 2 of the sessions in the mining indaba in Santa. And last night I happened to be at the address by our deputy chair, Mrs. Sarah Ramaphosa, and today we're here. And it's 3 totally different worlds. Totally different. The people who assembled at the Indaba, I don't believe some of the things that are being said here, they know them, but they're not part of that. It's not part of that discourse. So one of the issues I think that we have to face is that disconnect. We can't move forward as a country, and because that largely reflects our past rather than where we want to go. That's not a question, it's just a comment, so to speak. The question really is prompted by Samantha's concluding remarks, which were on the NDP, which are quite correct, actually, in terms of the structural issues, in terms of our economy and its future direction. The question, though, I want to pose, to all of us, is in making these analyses, which really go to the root of the challenge in terms of how our economy is functioning. And we've grappled with this at the National Planning Commission. I remember the chair at one point, Carl, saying he was very distressed, that's a Trevor Manuel, that colleagues, how do you disrupt establish patterns of accumulation in such a manner that the unintended consequences in the immediate are avoided. I think Carl responded to that by saying, whatever the answer is, it must involve some form of creative destruction. So I think in terms of the chapter on the economy right now, from what I gathered in the past few days, there's consensus that it needs to be revisited. So I'm kind of pleading that following this very, very insightful analysis, we could have as concluding chapters, suggested solutions to this huge, huge challenge. And maybe I could tail off by saying, I think Gavin was saying we are, unless I have you wrong, there's a measure of nationalization that's taken place. Maybe I misheard you. And then Dick was ended his own contribution by saying this is a candidate for nationalization. I think what I'm suggesting in terms of a way forward, constructive way forward, would actually throw light on some of those very now controversial and sensationalized solutions. If you look at some of our new party political formations, the solution is nationalization, right? And then we have established kind of papers, research papers, and recommendations suggesting other things. And that issue about the BEE, or triple BEE component, I hope that will be pursued further in the discussions, because I presume that was, in a sense, misguided attempt to deal with the profound issues of ownership without changing the structures in any meaningful way in terms of the historical trajectory of the mining sector. Thanks.
Thank you. We're in danger of eating into the next session, so I'm going to ask the panelists to briefly respond, closing remarks as well, Samantha, and also to address the question that was overlooked earlier.
Okay, 4 quick points. Firstly, in regard to the woman who up from the Lesotho Trade Union Congress, who asked about the changing labour migration. Partly to repeat what Gavin said, there is a panel specifically on these issues in the course of the 2 days, but it's a very important question, and I think it's not accurate to say that migrant labour has been abandoned, but it's very interesting to hear Callie Forrest talk last week about the reconfiguration in the migrant labour system that's occurring. And I think the key thing here is what Gavin talked about, is the geographical shift in mining to northwest and Limpopo, and the rise of what seems to be short distance migrants. And that's the key huge change, it seems to me. Secondly, I agree very much with your comment over here that the skewed pattern development is proving very difficult to change. That's absolutely right, and the fact that it affects the demand structure of the economy, the demand of the bulk of the population is very important. And this again relates to the question of the NDP and the failure of the NDP to put forward a strategy to really deal with this skewed structure, to put forward a strategy that deals with structural change, or addresses the question of structural change. But as the speaker said, quite rightly, there seems to be a consensus across the alliance, or across perhaps the SACP and COSATU, that the economic sections should be rewritten and they should be readdressed, and that they should be readdress particularly macroeconomic policy, capital flight, and capital controls. Now, to say that is one thing, but I mean, that's progress, but obviously pushing it forward and ensuring that it's implemented is another thing. Two final points relate to areas of further research or things that I should have said and didn't have time or perhaps forgot. Importantly, just to quickly mention chrome, which is a very important mineral, and is actually mined. A lot of the platinum producers actually mine it as a byproduct, because they control deposits at the same time. Chrome, and you see PGM producers selling chrome as an income supplier. This is very, very important. You look at chrome. Chrome goes into ferrochrome, which goes into stainless steel, and what you see is that South Africa's chrome increasingly exported, not beneficiated to stainless steel to China, who beneficiate it and use it for their stainless steel industry. China now has the biggest stainless steel industry in the world. South Africa's beneficiation of chrome into ferrochrome is decreasing, and that is a very, very important question in terms of industrial policy and using the minerals. Very, very last point. Dick mentioned Barbados and the importance of the complexity of ownership structures and so forth. Another area of very important research, I think, which needs taking up and developing, I'll refer to Lawrence Pretorius at UNISA who's doing this, is the changing patterns of interlocking directorships and the increasing centrality of platinum group metals in interlocking directorships, and how the platinum group metals and the platinum group producers are actually moving to the centre of power in that way. Very, very, very important.
On the question of migrant labour, just to say again, actually, in fact, not just a panel on migrant labour tomorrow, but a whole day looking at questions of labour, because you're absolutely right, it's absolutely fundamental. I'm just going to address my comments to the National Planning Commissioner. Nationalisation, okay, well the nationalisation I was talking about, of course, was the nationalisation of mineral rights, bringing them into state custodianship. And when one mentions nationalisation in that sense, that may sound as if it was a very radical measure. Not at all. This was actually the recommendation of the World Bank. And it's a recommendation of the World Bank because actually it's a move which fosters and supports and facilitates the breadth and the depth and accelerates capital accumulation. Because mining capitalists no longer have to deal with negotiating with 100 private landowners standing in the way of them, all of which may have different royalty demands, etc., etc. It's a rationalisation measure. It just goes to the state, and it knows what royalty it's going to pay, it knows where it's going to go, and it can get its rights. And this is why actually South Africa was completely out of step with international practice. Practically every other mineral property system in the globe have been nationalised, but this one, so this was catch-up. But of course, a very clear line was drawn when it came to the nationalisation of productive property, the nationalisation of the mining companies themselves, the nationalisation of the capital. A very clear line was drawn, and that came on the agenda in 2000 to 2002, but I think the events are now putting it absolutely on the agenda. This is my opinion. I think the platinum mining sector within South Africa is a sector which is absolutely ripe for nationalisation of capital. And I will tell you why for 3 reasons. The first reason is, as we've already said, absolute natural monopoly of the world's platinum resources here in South Africa. Why should we have this monopoly of resources in South Africa, and yet the profits from the mining of that resource, which have been absolutely phenomenal, end up going to London via Anglo-American, end up going out of the country, and leave us in a situation where we have the most intense inequality in the world. Second reason, Dunbar mentioned it, I mentioned it, the absolute madness which exists in the platinum mining industry as it's currently structured, where you have 1 or 2 absolutely massive players really controlling the game. They plan. There's planning in the platinum industry, but it happens within the companies. They plan decades ahead. How much investment will they have to make to get a new mine going? What is the lead time? How long will it cost? How long is that mine going to run for? They plan, they predict. There's planning in this economy, but it's planning which is in private hands between corporations which are in competition with one another. And that brings blind competition and anarchy into it as well. And so then we get these situations where Impala is competing with Anglo Platinum, which is competing with Lonmin, and suddenly the price goes up and they scramble like hell to get as much stuff out of the ground as they can, because they're driven by considerations of profit of their shareholders, and suddenly you get a situation where this is ridiculous situation of oversupply, of overaccumulation, the whole thing crashes, and we know who pays the price. So there's a madness in the system which is really, really hardwired, particularly in the platinum industry, to have that under rational control, to have that actually planned on the basis of producing in terms of need, without the competition. That turns things around. And the final reason is this: actually, platinum is South Africa's gift to the world. We've been asked environmental questions. Well, here's a different sort of environmental question. The reason why platinum demand has gone up is because of catalytic converters. Catalytic converters are reducing harmful emissions, which are going into the atmosphere, which are burning up the planet and is going to destroy all of us. But not just that. Platinum also is the unsubstitutable element in new fuel cell technologies, which have been seriously developed by motor car manufacturers around the world. Your BMWs, your Mercedes, your Toyotas for years have been putting serious money into developing a new form of energy, which basically comes from a chemical reaction between oxygen and hydrogen, and the byproduct of oxygen and hydrogen isn't some noxious gas, it's steam. Imagine that coming out of the exhaust pipe of every single car in the world. Imagine that coming out of every single factory. Imagine that being the way in which your house is heated, which these lights are running, which our cell phones work. That's the possibility of that technology. I'm sure there are a whole number of things which are holding it back. But this could be South Africa's gift to global humanity. Do you want that to be in private hands? Do you want that to be just for profit? Or do you want that technology to develop for human need? Do you want it to be based on the downstream industries which are going to create decent jobs for South Africans, which we so decently need? That's the possibility of nationalisation. That's the possibility of planning. I would argue to the NPC, consider nationalising platinum.
Yeah, I agree with Gavin on that, as Ben of you do also. I think here also that the classical socialist slogan of nationalization on the worker control and management, I think is really necessary to extend that to the mining communities under the control and management and overseeing sort of the power of the mining communities. And the reason are evident if you look at the so-called externalities, or the pollution, the social effects, the economic effect on the mining communities. The mining industry is one, together with the mining communities around it. But I mean, the mining community around Lonmin, for example, is a shackland. And the whole hostel conversion plan to convert the hundreds of mining hostels into family or single bachelor units, it is done in a way so that you out of 8 beds in a hostel, you got 1 or 2 beds in a unit, and 5, 6 of the workers are going to the shacklands. Or that is why the informal settlements around Lonmin industries are growing. So these are the types of development, of course, that the mining communities must have a control over. Then I think it's also important, and to the speaker, the woman back there, which I agree with, it's really a problem that when it's to have something sustainable, I think to get that and to really internalize all the externalities of the mining, it must be slower. It must, when you speak about beneficiation, it should be a lot about recycling of the metal already taken up from the ground. And the aim should be to mine less and less, of course. You can't have an exponential growth of such an industry. Then we will soon be mining on the ground we are standing on. And there's already today, as many of you know, there's a huge competition between food production and the use of land for mining. It's creating conflicts everywhere, in Limpopo, in Mpumalanga, etc., and now in Pondoland along the wild coast. Food is the basis of the economy. I mean, gold, oh, it's nice, but you have to eat. Try to eat, I can try to eat this ring. I will shit it out, it will not give any nourishment. Food is the basis, and it should be also our economy. When it comes to the BEE, I'm extremely critical against it. I mean, I'm much more in favor of the slogan of broad-based working class consumption, which would be black, of course. So it would be triple B, W, double C. Okay? Because the failure of this policy, I think, is because it's almost by definition, you have to build it in partnership with all wild capital. You can't go against it. You can't break off its trajectory. It is, of course, it is not what you would need. Would be white economic disempowerment, isn't it? WED, but that is not happening. All capital in South Africa is getting stronger and stronger, and ANC, sorry to say it, but I can say it as an immigrant coming here, so I can speak like a child, you know, so I can make mistakes. ANC is becoming a party of a faction of the bourgeoisie. Yeah. That is what this policy have turned ANC into. The backbone of this policy must be broken, and the whole effort must be shifted to the majority of South Africa and to the working class. So we need triple B, W, double C. Okay. And we also need WED. Yeah. Okay.
I'll take that as a clap for all the participants and contributors, including yourselves, and close this session. I've been told to say that we'll have a short 10-minute tea break and revert back here because we're already into the next session.
Okay, this session is called Platinum and the ANC's New Resource Nationalism. We have Paul Jourdan, Ben Fine and Saliem Fakier on speaking. We'll start with
I think we had something
Paul Jourdan. I'm going to keep the biographical introductions very short, just to say that Paul has a long, illustrious career working in economic policy, mining, minerals policy, and all aspects of that in South Africa, the region, and the continent, probably internationally. He's very well known. He currently is a visiting professor at WITS, and I'm not going to talk about his previous jobs, and maybe we should just let him start. Thank you. Okay. Can you please stand when you present so you can be filmed and recorded? Paul?
Where'd you switch this thing on? I don't have my glasses. Okay, thanks, Siraj. I'm going to go quite quickly because I haven't gone into total detail. A lot of this is based on the ANC study SIMS, which is the state intervention in the mineral sector study, which is available on the ANC website, where we looked in quite a lot of detail at platinum. And Zav did a lot of the background work on the history of the industry and the structure of the industry. This is a standard graph, we all know it. It's a bit silly, but if you take our resources in PGMs, that's platinum group metals, also known as the platinoids or the PGEs, the platinum group elements, then our reserves, not even to 2 kilometers, but less, are good for about 260 years. Now clearly, production will go up, so that will reduce that, but also there will be more reserves found, there will be deeper mining. The point was made that we in fact are mining at much shallower depths in platinum. So, but just to give you a ballpark, it's not like we're going to run out of platinum in the next 30 years. But if you look at the figure for gold there, it's 30 years. So we have a resource constraint in gold. This is one of the better estimates of our resources, and it gives us 75% for platinum, 50% for palladium. Most of the rest is as a byproduct from the Norilsk nickel deposits in Russia. The others are not that important because they're much smaller consumption. That's rhodium, ruthenium, iridium, and osmium. You've seen this map. This one's a bit confusing because it squashes. The northern limb is kind of inset just to make it more compact. But what it does give is the two main reefs. There's the Marensky Reef, which was mined only exclusively until